Have you ever had something rub you the absolute wrong way and you found yourself getting all wound up only to later realize that you actually misunderstood the situation or you were not seeing things from the proper perspective? Hi, I'm Barika from Simply Unique Coaching, and I have been leading for over 15 years. I've led more than 18 teams, and I just love to talk about leadership topics, professional development topics, and in today's video, we're going to talk about the importance of having the right perspective because that is going to position us to be powerful. So first of all, let's talk about what is perspective. Perspective is basically just how you view things from your vantage point. Now, if you've ever seen that movie Vantage Point, I absolutely love it. If you haven't seen it, it's been out for several years. Why haven't you seen it yet? But it shows how one situation can be viewed from so many different vantage points or perspectives, and how just the perspective that it's viewed from, it kind of just shifts what actually that person sees. And everyone in that movie saw different things because they were viewing them from different perspectives. So anyway, check it out if you haven't seen it yet. So what can really make having the right perspective be important is because it allows us not to misinterpret situations, because as humans, we all have our own emotions, we all have our own feelings, we all have our own thought processes, and because of that, each of us is not wired the same way. So the way that one person views the world is completely different from another person. And I will tell you, there is an actual opposite personality to your personality type, and that person is going to view things from a completely different perspective. So think about it from this perspective. You have the Apple user and you have the PC user, right? You have the iPhone and you have the Android. So in my opinion, I feel like both of those individuals who design them and who like them, they have a totally different way of viewing the world and seeing things, and that's why they like the things that they like, right? And it doesn't make one right and it doesn't make one wrong, even though everybody really has their preference, right? But both of them can be used to do what needs to be done. So just know that just because other people in the world have your exact opposite personality, it doesn't make them wrong. And it doesn't necessarily make you wrong, and it doesn't always make them right. So we just have to be able to think outside of ourselves, think of the world as being bigger than us. And the more self-aware we are, the better we're going to be able to properly position ourselves. And also having the right perspective helps to minimize misunderstandings, because a lot of times with conflict and situations where we're not seeing eye to eye with a person, it's really because of the perspective that the person is bringing to the table, and the other party is bringing a different perspective to the table. So here are some of the hangups that can actually keep people from having the proper perspective. Maybe there is a bias that is in place, and whenever we have a bias, that means that we are already leaning towards one side or the other when it comes to a circumstance, a situation, or just something that's happening. And we have to be mindful of our cognitive biases, because those are things filtering the way that we see the world, and it doesn't necessarily make them right or wrong, but we need to be aware of them. The more aware we are of them, the more we may realize if we're leaning on them versus actually being more in the middle, because sometimes we need to be actually a little bit more neutral in order to have the proper perspective. Also, there can be emotional triggers, because if, let's say, you got hurt in a certain area when you were younger, or maybe you at a certain job or something like that, and if somebody unintentionally or intentionally triggers that, you can have a reaction, you can have a response. And so maybe you may have grown up with a parent that would say one thing, but they would mean another. So you're always having to read into situations. So then when you go on your job and your boss says, "Hey, great job, thank you so much," and they go about their business, are you left thinking, did they really mean I did a great job? Or the tone that they used, did they really mean what they said? And it's because you had to read into things when you were a child, right? So just know that there are things that could be happening today that you may be responding to that really deal with an area that you may be unhealed in, or an area you need to work out in order to not have that same response, especially if you notice that you're having the same response around a certain situation and people are like, "Why, man, you are having a total reaction. It's not that big of a deal." And if that's the situation, then we want to take a closer look at that, because that may be an unhealed area that we need to work on. Also, social influences. So at one point in time, I lived in a particular location area, and I will definitely say that there were lots of biases in that particular location area, and it had to do with just the culture of that area and that region. And so just being aware that sometimes it is derived from the environment, and knowing that those can feed into the biases. Also, especially when we're moved out of that environment into a different environment, just knowing that we may be seeing things is maybe from a group think perspective, meaning that this is the way that the whole group thinks together. Or it could be, this is how we grew up, so this is what we did in our household, so that's what should be happening in every other household, and that's not necessarily the case. That's not necessarily true. So definitely one of the ways that we can work on making sure that we have the right perspective is taking time to self-reflect, I always love doing self-reflection. I think that that's super important because that helps you to get an idea of where you are and what you're thinking. Also being self-aware and being able to understand how we are perceived from the perspective of other individuals. That's really, really helpful as well as being able to get the opinions of other people. If you're not super sensitive, if you have a trusted friend, somebody who you really respect that you can get feedback from, ask them for their opinion on how you may respond to something or how you're thinking about a situation. And especially if you know it's a person that's going to be honest with you, get that perspective. And not to say that you always have to change your perspective, because sometimes your perspective may be the route that you need to follow, but just being aware that there are differing perspectives and knowing that sometimes I may actually need to change course. I may need to change what I wanted to say in that email. I may need to change what I wanted to say to the customer service rep, because perspective that I would approach it with is not necessarily the perspective that we want to use. So we want to keep that in mind as well. So now I want to hear from you. Is there a situation where you are not seeing eye to eye with someone? Let me know in the comments. I know we always have those things sometimes that ruffle our feathers. Sometimes you just need to type it out and get it out your system. And sometimes that helps heal and helps lift that burden that we may be feeling, right? So anyway, I hope that you had a great day. And if you would like to know more about how to help your emotional well-being and how to take certain things into consideration in relation to that, I want you to watch this video next. And with that being said, make it a great day.